Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Larry McIntosh, and I'll be your host for the next hour and every Saturday morning from 8 to 9. Welcome to the August long weekend edition of Food and Friends. I want to give you an update on Peak of the Market's TV commercial auditions. As I mentioned before, 312 children auditioned with me at the end of May for their chance to be in a Peak of the Market TV commercial. Our volunteer media judges had a very hard time narrowing it down to 12 screen tests, but they've done that. And the 12 auditions are now on peakmarket.com for you to view and vote on. So the 4 children that receive the most votes will appear in a Peak of the Market TV commercial this summer. Actually, about a couple of weeks we're going to be filming it. And they get $300 for their family and $300 for the charity of their choice. And all you have to do is go to visit peakmarket.com, watch the 30-second screen tests, and click on Vote for Me on any link for the child or children. You can vote for more than one child, and you can vote every day between now and Monday. So the voting ends at the end of Monday. So check out peakmarket.com. There's 12 editions. Watch them and vote for as many kids as you want because we need 4 for the TV commercials. My guest this morning is Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery. Good morning, Wayne.
Good morning, Larry.
How are you today?
Just absolutely wonderful. And yourself?
Good. So we're going to get it right off the hop. I over the years, I've always said Wayne Rogers from Variety, the Children's Charity of Manitoba. Now, you retired from there.
I did.
And now you're at Elmwood Cemetery.
I am.
So tell us a little bit.
I'm executive director, not at Elmwood.
Well, your office is there.
Yes,
I'm
my
assuming.
office is there.
Yeah. I don't want to insinuate something else. So tell us a little bit about what you do at the cemetery.
Well, it was really an opportunity. The last 8 years, I've been on the board of directors for the cemetery.
Okay.
And it's those that are familiar with Elmwood Cemetery. It's a very historic cemetery in Manitoba. It's 112 years old this year. It's very close to me because all my family are there. My mother, my grandparents, aunts and uncles, that type of thing. A number of friends. And it's important to me just to be able to give back. It was a location at 38 acres, by the way. It's just, and most people see it from Henderson Highway as they come over the Disraeli Bridge.
So let me ask about that because that's off Henderson Highway. Is it on the river?
It is on the river as well. It goes back to it's 38 acres total.
Okay.
It's beautiful. 1902 was when it incorporated, and in '98 it was taken over by a group of concerned citizens. Bill Norrie chairing that, by the way, who was on our board of directors until his passing recently. And Bill was a lovely individual.
Absolutely.
But there was an absentee owner of the property, and he was down east and had let it go almost to ruin. And we had, as a foundation, had picked it up for back taxes, and we took over ownership of it and are now restoring it to its former glory.
Now, was that the cemetery that had some problems when the river was flooding? Is that the one?
Yeah, the riverbank was caving in.
Oh, okay.
It was in rough shape, and it had been forgotten about and neglected, and that's all been repaired. It's been it was a huge undertaking, but it's complete. It's in fact a number of years ago that was completed, and we have close to 500 elm trees in there that are continually doing well. We have an arborist society come in, 10 different companies come in and volunteer a day of service for us now, each year, each September, in pruning the elm trees and treating them and fertilizing them, whatever. So we have probably one of the largest locations of elm trees in the city, probably, in the cemetery, yeah.
So you got involved, you've been on the board for many years, as you said, and you have family members that are there, so you have a connection to the... So what do you do now? Like, what's your role?
Well, my role is as it was with Variety. It's bringing funds in. It's fundraising. We do not receive government funding at all, support funding from the government for the cemetery. So the maintenance of it is extremely important. The maintenance and upkeep. I mean, you have to cut the grass and just maintain the property. And if there is situations with any of the headstones and whatever that have to be repaired or leveled, whatever, then there's somebody there to do it, of course. But it's just making it, and there's a lot of work. I mean, I've really learned a lot. I started June 23rd, and I'm there every day. And because I have another company as well where I do some consulting, fundraising consulting as well. But I spend at least 5 hours a day at the cemetery. But there's so much to learn. But it's really, really important to me. And it's important to me historically. There's some great history to the cemetery. There's some wonderful, heart-wrenching stories that go along with it, and yeah, and it's the only cemetery, to our knowledge, that the community of Elmwood actually was named after the cemetery, and I think it's one of the only situations in the province. And it was the first non-denominational cemetery in the province as well.
No, yeah, and I didn't realize that. But when you and we had dinner about a week ago, and you were talking about this, and I honestly never thought about it. I mean, there's 38 acres on the river, all these elm trees. Someone's going to have to maintain it, and there's a lot of history there, which we'll talk about a little bit in the next segment. But you don't really give that too much of a thought.
Well, you know what, people. The people that have and come in, we get so many compliments. Like, for example, each Mother's Day, and we maybe go a little bit in other words, not that everybody doesn't care, but we'll try to do a little bit extra. I think sometimes, like Mother's Day, for example, which is probably one of the biggest visitation days to any cemetery around the world, really. But we're there. The board of directors is there. Our spouses are there, and Susan's there, and whatever, and we hand out carnations to all the ladies coming in for the day to visit, and people really, and we have pipers there, the junior pipers, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to give back to the community too.
We'll be right back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery, after we take this break for your weather update. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Please follow us on Twitter at Peak of the Market for recipes and Manitoba veggie crop updates. We have over 100,000 Twitter followers from all over the world, and we'd love to have you follow us too. Again, we're at Peak of the Market, or my Twitter account is at Larry McIntosh. We're back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery, and we were just talking off air about a whole bunch of history. But I have to say, years ago, Shelley and I, it wasn't that many years ago, a couple of years ago, Shelley and I visited New Orleans. And we took a bus tour, which we tend to want to see the city and, we want to see what's going on. And part of the bus tour there was going through the cemeteries. Because in New Orleans, it's a celebration of life, and it's a different way of, I shouldn't say that. Do people look at it that way? Is it a celebration?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because you know what? It's not the fear of cemeteries to people now. It's always for movies and the Dracula movies and everything else. In fact, when I was younger, I lived right behind the cemetery, as a matter of fact, in my younger days, and it was a playground to a lot of us kids, and we'd go in there and play, and it was a very cool place to be. But it is a celebration, and you know what? It's very interesting. One of our monument providers, and Matt, he's with a monument company, but his gift to us is, I just had a brief meeting with him, and what he wants to do is to provide at least a couple of markers for us, because there's every cemetery has them as many unmarked graves, and it would have been somebody that didn't have a family, or the family didn't have the funds in order to get a marker put in. And as he put it, he said, if you don't have a marker, you don't exist. And so he's going to donate a couple each year, and we look, and a lot of children's graves and things like that we want to restore. And so there's a huge part of that, but it is a celebration, and it's a wonderful place to. We have people come and jog in there every morning, regulars. We have people that come and ride their bikes through. I went through the other day. There was a lady sitting there, probably in the, I would say, mid-60s or so, and she was sitting there in a lawn chair knitting. And she had, her husband was just placed there a couple of years ago. But she comes like in the summer, she comes every Sunday and spends a few hours just sitting with him, talking to him. And if you don't have some place, people need a place to go to see and visit. When we were in Europe recently, and I know you've been to many, many places, but I get really misty and get teary over, when I found my grandfather's grave, I think I mentioned to you, in France, and he was killed in World War I, and we actually found his grave in Grenay, France. But in Europe, they look after cemeteries so well. They're pristine. They have school children. They educate school children on the history, and that's really important. And so we hire kids for the summer to work in the summer, cutting the grass and all this stuff. And they're really great kids out there and they want to learn as well. But it's important that people celebrate the people that are in there. And we've got very famous people in there. Bill Norrie is one most recently, but Duff Roblin, our former premier, and heaven knows how well thought of Duff Roblin is. I mean, with Duff's Ditch and all.
Saved our city many times.
Yeah, and his grandfather, Rodman Roblin, who was also a premier of Manitoba. We have Mr. Sharp, who was in 1955-56 mayor of Winnipeg. And, Olympic hockey players played in the 1924 Olympic Games. And Cora Hind, as I'd mentioned at some time ago, who was huge in the suffragette movement, and the first female journalist in Manitoba with the Manitoba Free Press. So it's really, it really is something to celebrate for sure. Absolutely, no question.
Well, you said the cemetery is 112 years old?
112 years old this year.
So I guess it stands to reason, although, as I said, I hadn't really given a whole bunch of thought, but there's going to be a lot of history there. There's a lot of famous people that certainly I've heard of, but there's lots of people over the years. How many people will be buried there?
Over 52,000.
Really?
Yeah. It's people are just astonished, and they ask, "Oh, is it full? Are you full yet?" And we have room for. I know you were asking earlier. We have room for probably about another 400 plus traditional burials, but a lot of people over the past number of years, internationally even, have turned to ash burials, to cremation. And so columbariums and niches are a lovely way, and they're less cost as well to families and whatever. So it's as things change. And there's, oftentimes you go places, in particular in Europe, and they have little scattering gardens, and they have areas where trees will be, a small plaque can be placed on a tree in memory of someone. So there's things to do in a more natural setting, and it's so peaceful there. I mean, it's really it's a place of peace and comfort. Right, and that's what it should be.
And you mentioned earlier, when you think of cemeteries, you see the movies, right? There's right. Ghosts, or there's vampires, or there's something scary going on. Yeah. But it's a beautiful park-like setting, for lack of better words.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and we had and there's been a couple of movies. They've shot some scenes there, and the Patrick Swayze movie, One Last Dance, was a fair amount of it was shot there as well. So, yeah, there's some exciting things happening in the cemetery.
We'll be right back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. It's time for a recipe segment called Now We're Cooking. Now, you don't need to write this recipe down, as it's today's recipe of the day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Sun, so you can get all the information from our website or today's Winnipeg Sun. Today's recipe is roasted asparagus with feta cheese and bacon. Roasted asparagus with feta cheese and bacon. Here's what you need for the recipe. 2 pounds of asparagus. Now, Manitoba asparagus is done. It's been done for a while now. So probably this time of year, asparagus is coming out of Peru. And I kind of think asparagus is a cool crop because it only lasts 7 weeks in any particular region, yet we can get asparagus year-round. It's kind of cool. Half a cup of feta cheese crumbled, half a pound of bacon cooked and crumbled, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Wash the asparagus and pat dry with a paper towel. Lay the spears on a baking sheet and drizzle with olive oil over the top. Cook the asparagus at 425 degrees for 12 to 14 minutes. Cook the bacon in a skillet until crisp. Crumble and lay on a paper towel. Once asparagus is roasted and tender, remove from the oven and place on a platter, and then sprinkle the asparagus with crumbled bacon and feta cheese. And this recipe serves 4. Again, this recipe is roasted asparagus with feta cheese and bacon. Long title is today's recipe of the day at peakmarket.com and in the Winnipeg Sun. And all the recipes on our website or in the newspaper have both metric and imperial measurements, so you can get all the information there. We'll be right back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery, after we take this break for your 680 CJOB News, Sports, and Weather. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Food and Friends. I have a Manitoba-grown vegetable crop update here. So here it is. It's quick, and there's lots of crops coming off the field now, so this is an exciting time of year. We have Manitoba-grown beets, broccoli, kale, cucumbers, cauliflower, zucchini, green, red, and Savoy cabbage, carrots, and cucumbers, all now available at your local store. I'm going to go through it one more time. Beets, broccoli, kale, cucumbers, cauliflower, zucchini, green and red cabbage, as well as Savoy cabbage, carrots just coming off the field, and cucumbers. And everything's available at your local store either today or be coming in the next couple of days in the case of carrots. And harvesting by the end of next week will be peak of the market leeks, pickling onions, jalapeno peppers, and corn on the cob, which is always a favorite. So when you visit your local store, please support locally grown products. And as always, if it says peak in the market on the label, you are guaranteed it's grown right here in Manitoba. We're back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery. So Wayne, all those crops I named off available, can you list them off alphabetically?
Asparagus.
No, that was the recipe.
We, by the way, Susan and I, we eat vegetables. I would say every day we have vegetables of some sort, and our Manitoba vegetables, as you say, are they're the peak, Larry.
You're good friends.
They are.
Thank you for support.
We love vegetables.
So back to Elmwood Cemetery. Yes. How you do fundraising for it, or how's it?
We do. Well, that's really my role. Really, I mean the operation of the cemetery is. I mean, there's maintenance people, which are Richard Joy is our maintenance manager out that looks after the maintenance of the cemetery. Bob Watling, who is in fact he's semi-retired, but he's a consultant with us as well, very knowledgeable, and actually our young lady in the office, Jerry Mason, is and she's a huge she was a huge fan of the Dirty Dancing guy, Patrick Swayze.
Oh yes.
Well, they shot a bit of a movie there, so she cornered him in the washroom while he's putting his makeup on, forced him to have a picture.
Oh wow, good for her.
Oh yeah, good on her. Yeah, she's great. But she's been there 23 years. They know how to operate and run the ceremony. And they're just absolutely people that are committed to it. They love it. They love caring for it. And I'm really blessed to be able to work with them. But my role is fundraising, so I will be. I mean, it's the planned giving aspect of things, certainly bequests and wills, and with life insurance policies, things that you can do in that respect. We receive a good number, and we can always receive more because all the money goes towards the operation of the cemetery. So it's really helpful to us, whatever donations we get. I want to get out in the community more and make the community, the awareness that as you mentioned about the riverbank situation, things like that, to assure people and have them visit and have them come by. And people, we get calls really daily from people just thanking us for what we're doing, thanking us for the beautiful job and the care that we're giving to it. Because you know what? It's a wonderful thing to give back to the community. And you know how I feel about community, and I know how you feel about community. And the history of it and what it means to the city is worth more than dollars can speak, really. It's and you see the joy that you can put on people's faces, too, sometimes. And I know we're talking cemeteries, but it is, as you'd mentioned, it's something to be celebrated, absolutely, for sure.
So if people are interested in looking at donating or planned giving, as you're saying, do you have a website, I assume?
Yeah, the website is Elmwood, historic Elmwood Cemetery .ca.
Okay.
And they can always call us at the cemetery as well. And I've of course misplaced the phone number right now as
I'm sure it's on the website.
But it is and the website's up. We're just refreshing the website as well. But they can certainly drop into the office, as some do. But yes, any donations of any kind are absolutely more than welcome. And again, it's just the things that we've done and accomplished with it and continue to do, and it's going to take many years of it. We just don't want happen to it before ever happen again.
And you say there's 4 of you working there, including yourself, right?
Well, and then the support staff and the maintenance end, but in the office area, yeah, and then a great board of directors. It's a smaller board. In fact, we're looking for new board members for the board, which is great. And Bill Norrie was a former board member, and it's really Jim Baker is the president of the board, but I know Jim would welcome any calls, absolutely, for sure, in regards to people interested to be a part of the history and to be part of its success and having it restored to its former glory, for sure.
Do you ever get people coming to the office looking for relatives, or
all the time?
Is that right? Yeah?
All the time.
That was a bizarre question, actually.
Well, no. In fact, daily we do.
Hey.
And people are coming in from out of town. Many that have, and we had some people up from Texas last week that their great grandmothers here and wanted their sourcing. So many people are sourcing out, with the whole genealogy thing and looking up your family roots and all this kind of thing. It's really quite wonderful. And then when they find out we're getting more walking tours going through, and it's a beautiful place to walk anyway. But walking tours coming through. But people come to the office, and Jerry's she's just a delightful thing anyway. She's really lovely. But she'll look up. You just have to have of course, the family name and whatever. And it's always helpful to have a year that they pass because it goes back to 1902. First internment was a little girl. She was an infant, and that was Evelyn Lemon was her name. And a stone was donated for her because the family didn't have any. So she was the first internment, so a stone had been donated on behalf. And then another gentleman recently, over the past number of years, donated a larger headstone in honor of all the children that are there in an unmarked grave and whatever. It's really a beautiful place. I misty up on things, don't I?
Sorry, when I think of a cemetery, I think it's something that, yes, you would go to if you know somebody there, but I wouldn't think of going for a walk in there or...
Oh, you know what? When Sue and I were in Paris a few years ago, and Paris has the most visited cemetery in the world, the Père Lachaise Cemetery. In that cemetery are buried Voltaire, Edith Piaf, Oscar Wilde, Jim Morrison from the Doors, Frédéric Chopin. It's a part of the life and breath of a city as a cemetery too, and it's memory and it's. But every place that we go to, we try, any major city anywhere, we try to visit the cemetery there. Great history.
We'll be right back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Food and Friends Radio is now on TV. Each radio show is filmed and will be posted on MyToba.ca later this weekend. So if you want to see the TV version of Food and Friends or previous radio shows, please visit MyToba.ca. Thanks to 680 CJOB's Nicole, who produces our show, and Chad, who operates the camera, as well as the teachers at the Broadcasting and Media Arts program at Tech Voc High School. You can also listen to an audio podcast of Food and Friends at SoundCloud.com and at the iTunes Store. So please just do a search for Food and Friends with Larry at MyToba.ca or SoundCloud.com or the iTunes stores, and all the shows will come up for your listening or viewing pleasure. And it's very important, I mention this every week, but it's very important to say that Food and Friends is only available because of 680 CJOB and its advertisers. So please make sure you tune in to 680 CJOB or listen live at CJOB.com. We're back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery. It was about, a month ago or 6 weeks ago, there was an article that Gordon Sinclair, who's been on the show probably a couple months ago now, but he wrote an article on the cemetery and on a person that was buried there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was on Mother's Day, actually. Gord was there, this past Mother's Day. And again, what we do is, as a board of directors, and I was then on the board, but what we do is we're there with our spouses on Mother's Day for the day, and we pass out flowers to all the ladies that come and visit, because again, it's, as I'd mentioned earlier, one of the most visited days internationally for cemeteries. And Gord was there, but earlier in the day, before he got there, a woman had come in, and I happen to know her husband, but she came in with this little diary of a little girl named Irene Smith. And she had passed away in 1909, and she had written this, she had a diary, but she had these most incredible entries in it in regards to little drawings and little etchings of things and whatever. And in fact, he included one, if you recall, in the article about the little ducklings and okay, Mrs. Duck, it's time to take the little ducklings home to bed or something like that. And just really a lot to detail, and it was just the most. And then all of a sudden the entries stopped, and it was really interesting because. The woman that had found it because she heard she was buried there, wanted to confirm that she was indeed there, and she was. And there was no headstone, and someone had donated a headstone again for her. But these entries and this diary this little girl had, and she died of congenital heart disease in 1909 and passed. And she was, and we had a little picture of her in the article, and just the loveliest little thing. And it was just. it was one of those heart-wrenching things. It was beautiful. It wasn't overly sad, but it was just what a wonderful little girl she was, and what a just. I think the woman had said it about just God bless her wee little soul. She said, but those kind of stories are just we have so many wonderful stories like that.
Well, being around 112 years, and how many people are buried there? Sorry,
just over 52,000.
Over 52,000. So there's lots. You were mentioning in the earlier segment. There's lots of people, famous people we heard of, but there's 52,000 stories of everybody's done something in life and accomplished something, or it may not be famous, but everybody's done something. It's kind of nice to have memories.
And it's nice. It's nice too, as well. And one of my goals is that in the infant section, for example, and a lot of the stones there are in need of, because a lot of them are from 1909, 1902, whatever, and they're not very legible to read. And so it's either going to be restoring them and painting the lettering in again. So we're going to try. We're going to try to, and there's many of them. But those are the kind of things and those are the kind of things fundraising-wise that we can do, is that we can offer fundraising opportunities to different corporations and businesses and individuals, as we would with anything else. And it's as important as anything else, if not more important sometimes. And I'm really, again, as I'd mentioned, I'm honored to be able to do it because I have a bond there and my family is there, and I feel I owe it to my family. And, it's funny, I go in every morning, and I say, "Hi, Ma," but I was really close to my mom and whatever. But it's really a very special place, and again, the people that use it jogging wise, whatever, come in, tell us because it's like a park. So you'll have to come by, just come by one day or something and take a walk through. It's a very, very cool, very interesting place. I love being there.
And it is a celebration, and we talked about that in an earlier segment. It's the memories of these people. It's to look at it as a celebration of their lives and to remember them, especially some of the unmarked graves you were talking about earlier. That a person's going to donate some headstones for them to remember these people, so they're not forgotten.
Yeah, and he put it to me, he says, he said, if there's no headstone for someone there, they don't exist. And it's a very interesting comment, and or they never existed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's the same in any cemetery, I'm sure, but cemeteries worldwide are an extraordinary place to visit, and we welcome people to come by. We're going to be doing some renovations in our little office and stuff like that. But I'm really honored to work with who I'm working with there, with the staff there. They're very caring, wonderful people, and I'm really blessed to be able to be there and help.
From a fundraising point of view, and I know there's tons of maintenance to do and all those type of things, but it's got to be a bit of a story for you to tell, because cancer or heart and stroke or people relate to that, but there's a little more of a story for you to tell, and I think you've done a great job here on the show. But you need to. It's hard to get that out.
Well, and I'm really proud to tell it too. But it is a wonderful story, and we get so many wonderful comments from families, and families coming back, and I had a fella come in who I've known for some time, and his mom's not doing well, and she's in palliative care now, and he gets a little misty, and we have to be very compassionate and whatever, which we are, and yet it's that celebration thing, and that, and we had one remains come in from out west that it was his wish that he wanted to be buried in Elmwood Cemetery, and that happens an awful lot, that it's in people's wills that's where they want to be. And it's it's a place of calm and peace and comfort. Okay?
We'll be right back with Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery, after we take this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Please join me for a special edition of Food and Friends on Monday, August 4th, this Monday, at noon, when my guest will be Sandy Schindelman, President and CEO at Schindelman. Shindico, not Schindelman. He's Schindelman. Shindico. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, it's Monday at 4 at noon, and I'll practice everything before that. My guest today has been Wayne Rogers, Executive Director of Elmwood Cemetery. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Larry, it's always a delight. I know I've been on the show many times, right, again, with variety and whatever, and I loved my years doing that. I love this, and thank you for your kindness. Thank you for what you do in the community, and to you and your lovely bride, always best wishes.
And thank you for the kind, but you're the pillar of the community. You're out there all the time, whether it was with Variety or with Elmwood or, at all these other charity events. So thank you for being on Food and Friends.
Thanks, Larry, very much.
Thanks to Nicole Bonnycamp, our show's producer. Enjoy your long weekend and please join me Monday at noon. Take care and please don't forget to eat your veggies.